We've been talking a lot about Francois Legault's announcement yesterday as it reflects on temporary foreign workers, international students, and some people think perhaps it's gone too far. It's certainly in the case of those who are already here and have just found out that if they're applying to renew their permits to stay here, they're part of this 6-month freeze as well. However, the leader of the Parti Québécois, Paul St. Pierre Plamondon, feels this has not gone far enough. He is on the line. Monsieur Plamondon, thanks for being here.
Hi.
I believe I read in La Presse, your actual quote is, it's a small step, but we are no longer in the stage of little steps. What does that mean, and why do you think this isn't enough?
Well, it means that we're going through an important housing crisis, an important difficulty in delivering public services such as healthcare and education, and it has an effect. Immigration at the level we have, the current level, also have an effect on the linguistic dynamics. And this is because we went from around 100,000 temporary immigrants in Quebec, in the province of Quebec in 2016, to more than 600. So basically, we've added the equivalent of the city of Quebec in around 3-4 years. And of course, that very sudden change in demographic does not correspond to our capacity to build proportionate housing and to provide services. It has an adverse effect on the labor shortage, and in which case we need to get back to a model that worked pretty well. Quebec's immigration model in the beginning of the 2000s was regarded worldwide as a success, and we need to get back to that model. Unfortunately, Trudeau's government decided to impose a model that, according to many experts and studies, have caused important instability in many aspects of our society.
So, but you've heard other people, you've heard critics suggest as well, and I know the Premier said this yesterday, this idea of blaming the housing crisis on immigration, and others says that's simply not the case. That's an interpretation. You don't agree with that? Why?
Because you have studies of 3 major banks, Canadian banks, the Canadian Mortgage, SCHL as well, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. You have several university studies saying, of course, if you last year, let's just take 2023. If you bring in 230,000 new persons on the territory of Quebec, and you build 30,000 units of housing, of course it has an impact, an important impact on offer and demand, and hence on homelessness, on the prices of houses, on the prices of the rents, and that has been confirmed by several studies. So it's not here about opinion. It's been confirmed by many studies, and it's not about being positive or negative about immigration. It's just to find a sustainable model, and that's in the interest of all Quebecers, whether first, second, or 20th generation in Quebec. It's all in our interest to find a model that provides services and a roof to every Quebecer, and that also provides a social stability for everyone. We see what's happening in Europe, and I think we would be better off getting back to a model that worked well instead of going through radical changes such as those that we went through in the past few years.
But when you talk about getting back to a model, I mean, the world has changed between then, what you're citing, and where we are now. There are more people than ever, of course, looking to leave their particular countries where they were born. That's just the reality of the matter today. So what would you want to see cut? I mean, how much more severe would you want to see the cuts be?
They're not severe. What François Legault announced yesterday is around 2,000 people cut out of 600 on the territory. So there's nothing severe right now. And we used to be at 100 instead of 600 only 5-6 years ago. So obviously, if we want to get back to a society where there's housing for everyone and where services are provided to everyone, we'll need to get back. But the change that we've been through over the past years is radical. So the response will seem drastic, but basically what we will be doing is get back to a model that worked well for everyone, not more than 15 years ago. So we will present a very comprehensive plan category by category to get back to an equilibrium. But I think here the purpose should be not to be in a contest of who gets the higher number, the highest figure. The contest should be who can bring a model that is sustainable and a win-win for everyone in our society. And if we get to that, I think we'll do better off than many European countries right now that are obviously having many trouble because their planning of migration was not very solid.
But with respect to what you just described as a win-win model, there are plenty of small and medium-sized businesses across this province who do not like the idea as it is now, and obviously would like your idea even less by virtue of the fact they just simply can't find workers. What do you say to them?
I think you're referring to lobbies that have been pushing over the past years for as many new persons as possible so as to lower their costs. And that doesn't mean that's in the public interest to do so. And when we're talking about growing, very important growing figures in terms of homelessness, when we're talking of basic services that are affected because we can't cope with those figures, again, yes, certain areas, economic areas, will need to be careful so as to give them transitions, some time to adapt. But this very important increase in immigration over the past years was based on a lie. And the lie is that more immigration will solve the labor shortage. And all serious studies on the topic actually say that it's false. It's a lie. And in the case of Quebec, the most recent study shows that because immigration levels have gone so high, it's actually contributing to the labor shortage because much of the labor force is directed to adapting to those changes. So in which case, we will try to be as collaborative as possible with small businesses that might be impacted. But the bottom line from a macroeconomic perspective is that those high levels of immigration do not solve the labor shortage.
With respect to, lobby groups, I mean, we've had enough people we've talked about just anecdotally on the show, perhaps, saying they're having trouble finding workers. And I know the argument is always, well, if we had local people, if we had residents here who would fill those jobs, we would need these temporary foreign workers. And then the question then becomes, well, people here don't want those jobs because they don't pay enough. So how do you square that circle?
Well, of course, if you can get workers, more workers for a low cost, you'll take that solution in certain economic areas instead of trying to optimize, innovate, and find solutions to attract workers. The truth is, if you look at Ontario, at Quebec, and many European countries, raising every year the levels of immigration has worsened the situation. So those testimonies of people saying, I have trouble finding workers for my business, they're worse today than they were 10 years ago before we started raising the levels of people we welcome every year. So we need to see that from a macroeconomic perspective, what we're doing right now is not working. We need to take into account the specific situations of certain companies so that they don't go out of business, so that we take it gradually, we listen to their specific situations. But the evidence everywhere in the Western world is that it doesn't solve the case, it doesn't solve the situation for those companies.
Would you, in your policy, would you have exemptions as well, like we do now for different sectors? Which ones?
Well, I don't want to disclose the plan. It's going to be in the next weeks. But of course, in some areas, we need to go easy because unfortunately, through those years of more and more temporary workers coming to Quebec, they've become in a certain way dependent on it. And so if the measure is all of a sudden in certain sectors, it could hinder the strength of that economic sector. So certain areas are exempted, others are treated more gradually, but overall, it is an important reduction so that we are not at 700 and 800 over the next years, because that's where we're going. It's still growing. The number is still growing, and we are far from having the housing integration and social service capacity.
Well,
So
you say it's growing, but the federal government has already given us an indication that they're going to work to bring those numbers down anyway. So it's not going to be growing; it's actually going small, will it not?
I'll see it I'll believe it when I'll see it, because what the federal government has done since 2015, the Trudeau taking power, is basically to sabotage our immigration system that was regarded as a real success in terms of integration, in terms of satisfaction of everyone. It's just the Roxham episode, and followed by the changes of rules in airports and this obsession of bringing more temporary immigrants through their powers at the federal level, is such an ideological derive, such an ideological, I'm looking for the word in English, but such an obsession on their part, that I'll see it when I believe it, because 1 or 2 years ago, Mark Miller was still saying that bringing more people is always good for housing because they're going to build themselves their own house. Like, such stupid reasoning, I'm sorry, but that's what it is, has been said by that government on so many occasions. So what the Trudeau government says on that topic is worth very little as far as I'm concerned.
Final question. Someone, when we were talking about this before, said, and because Francois Legault mentioned, I think you mentioned it off the top as well, beyond all the economic numbers and the figures cited, there's a concern for French as well. The Premier said, you know what, especially in Montreal, too many immigrants, not enough people speaking French. Someone said, why don't you just have a policy that, for Quebec, that says don't move to Quebec if you can't speak French?
Oh, yeah, but that's, of course, there are many things that the Legault government could have done. And it's important to remember, the Legault government raised the immigration levels, permanent levels, and temporary immigration. They went on missions worldwide to increase the immigration, and yet they're complaining all the time about everyone except themselves. So it's been a poor government in many aspects.
I understand,
not only linguistic and immigration, but on many topics.
But I'm asking you, would you consider, if French is the big concern here, the threat that these immigrants won't speak French, could you see yourself simply saying, don't consider moving to Quebec if you can't speak French? Does that make sense to you?
Well, you do it in a different way. Instead of asking for a level 4 mastery of the French language before getting your approval for immigration, you could ask for, because level 4 is basically asking for a coffee or a beer, but it's the equivalent of most Quebecers' level in Spanish when they go on vacation. So you could do things indeed for raising criteria in terms of already knowing French when you arrive to Quebec. And on that topic, the CAQ speaks a lot, says many things on immigration, not always in a very agile and respectful way, but they do very little. They don't explore ways of making sure that immigration that will always be there and that used to be quite a good model in Quebec also enables us to have an equilibrium from a linguistic standpoint. They haven't done that.
All right. I'm going to have to leave it there. Monsieur Plamondon, I always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
À la prochaine.